Hey everybody, it's Dr. AnthonyChaffee here. I'm here with special guest Brett Lloyd, who is a longtime carnivore and carnivore coach. He's now over 1,300 days carnivore and has a very interesting story to tell about his own personal progress with health and the carnivore diet. Brett, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, Doctor, it's a privilege to speak with you. I love what you're doing out there in the community, and it's great to be a part of spreading the word about this wonderful way of living and eating with you.
Well, thank you very much. Um, so, Brett, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? What brought you onto the carnivore diet? What was going on before that? And what sort of changes did you see?
Well, I was quote unquote fortunate to grow up in a home that was a standard American diet by the book kind of a household. My mom and dad had an enormous vegetable garden. We had fresh vegetables year round. We also had plenty of meat. Uh, but it looked like the food pyramid, you got your grains, you got your cereals, you got all this other stuff. And out of the four of us, my dad passed away last year
I'm sorry.
after suffering from type 2 diabetes for over 20 years of his life. His last 5 years were a nightmare because dementia got a hold of him. And this was all before I learned what I know about type 2 diabetes being completely reversible, etc.
Yeah.
My sister, my little baby 6 foot tall sister, suffers from IBS, ulcerative colitis, still to this day. And my mother's had a number of, if you can call them, minor skin autoimmune issues and other ailments throughout the years. Uh, and I suffered from severe chronic depression, anxiety, and insomnia for over 40 years of my life. And that's from following the standard American diet. I think I would have gotten sick sooner than the age 15 if I hadn't been an athlete and was able to exercise my way just a little bit ahead of things. But I started experiencing sleep problems and mood issues around the age of 15. During that era in schools, at least here in America, there were no professionals roaming the halls looking for those kinds of things. So I was just labeled an angry kid and dealt with accordingly. Um, Voted class grouse. People ask me, what's depression like for you? Was it like for you? And I was a very angry, depressed person.
Mm-hmm.
I was extremely dissatisfied with everything in my life. Nothing was good enough. I wasn't good enough. This could always be better. Why isn't this better? Why wasn't it its best to start with? And then it got delusional as time went on. Dr. Chaffee, if my family just helped me get this cup, everything in my life would be so much better.
Yeah.
And in a great expense and aggravation, they'd get the cup and I would have it for 10 minutes and find 100 things that were wrong with it and why it was a piece of crap, and so was I. That's what depression was like for me. I also describe as, if you will, imagine what it's like to have a 50-pound anvil on your head every moment of the day. You wake up with it. It's weighing you down. It makes everything more difficult. You can't hear things correctly because you've got this thing on your head that never lets up. And you go to bed that night knowing it's going to be there waiting on you in the morning.
Yeah.
That's a lot what depression was like for me. I had a promising career in psychology in my early 20s, which I self-sabotaged. That was something else I found interesting. Here I was working with all these PhD level credentialed folks, psychiatrists, authors, and going to staff meetings, etc. And nobody noticed that there was something wrong with me. And I just still to this day find that rather interesting. But I sabotaged that career thanks to mental illness. I still have to bear the responsibility for those things. My life became unmanageable by the time just before I turned 30 or just after I turned 30. and I checked myself into River Park Psychiatric Hospital in Huntington, West Virginia, where I was formally diagnosed with major depression.
Yeah.
And spent 16 days in there. Came out, they gave me a Prozac prescription and a whole bunch of samples. Prozac was very expensive. This was like 1990, very expensive back then. And I didn't have insurance that was going to cover it. I took it for a few weeks, never really felt much better or different. Made some behavioral adjustments that improved my quality of life a little bit, made me a little more socially appropriate. But then fast forward to a few years after that, I'm living in Newport, Tennessee, and the doctor tells me, listen, if you don't go on medication soon, your life's going to become very uncomfortable, because I started having panic attacks. My mood was starting to crater inexplicably. Got wrecked a marriage, got divorced, met my current and then final wife. Life got better for a couple of years, but still, I was taking the Prozac, but inexplicably, at times, my mood would get worse. And that just started happening with greater and greater frequency. In 2007, I had a textbook nervous breakdown due to a familial event I don't get specific about. I went for 2 months, only sleeping an hour or two a night. And when you do that, bad things start to happen.
Yeah.
My diagnosis got changed to major depression with psychotic features, because when you hear children playing in the yard and you're the only one at home, that's not good. My anxiety just got exponentially worse. Insomnia was a horrible problem that we just couldn't shake. Finally, they put me on the drug Remeron. I'll never forget this. I got to sleep for 2 weeks. It was great. And I gained 25 pounds or more in that 2 weeks, because Remeron is such a notorious weight gaining drug. And my diet then was pure, garbage.
Yeah.
Just lots of carbs. I had always had meat, lots of carbs, lots of cakes, lots of ice cream, because I was told, hey, you're going to eat what we serve growing up. When you're out on your own, you can eat whatever you want. So that's what I did when I grew up. I ate whatever I wanted, and boy, did I pay a heavy price for that. They got me to sleep for 2 weeks, and then I went on another 6-week run of only an hour or two sleep. And then they finally put me on this combination medicine of an antipsychotic with Prozac called Symbyax. And that stopped the free fall, but it came with its own problems, because I would sleep 10 or 12 hours a night on that stuff, and then need to take 1 or 2 2-hour naps during the day. So it wasn't much of a life. It was just mainly an existence.
Yeah.
The December of 2008, I'm like, I've had enough of this. I've got to start thinking differently. I can't fix what happened with the familial thing, and life has to go on. So I kind of talked to myself that I was going to be better, and was able to get off the Symbyax and just do the Prozac. I was on Ativan by this time. I took Ativan for 8.5 years as prescribed, and they put me on trazodone. Trazodone did help me sleep, but I woke up with a drug hangover every single morning from it. So that was life for a while. And I gained a bunch of weight throughout this process, and I was complaining to my wife, and she said, well, you ought to check out this Atkins diet. I'm reading and hearing a lot of good things about it. And being mentally ill, I kind of read every other sentence, and I gathered, okay, give up potatoes and bread and eat a lot of meat. You can still have fruit. You can still have other things we should never have had, cereal, whatnot. And I lost like 35 pounds. And my mood did get better, but at no time did me, my wife, or my doctor equate the improvement in mood to the change in eating. I
Yeah.
thought it was because I'd made some mental adjustments and life was going on much better. I wrote a faith-based album, wrote a couple of secular albums. I got to I'm a musician. Um, I got to go to my 30-year high school class reunion, had a wonderful time. Although when I see those pictures now, I see how big my belly was. That's not real appealing to me these days. Um, and life was better, but I was still not well. I was nowhere near optimal. I mean, I still had far too many bad days. Fast forward to May of 2010, I decided, Dr. Chaffee, that I missed ice cream and I missed coconut cake and I missed coconut cream pie. I missed all that very much. And I decided I could eat that. And if I gained a bunch of weight back, well, I could just go back on Atkins. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
What could go wrong? So in July of 2010, I'm at Mass. I'm a thankful Catholic convert. Mass is very important to me. And we're on our knees praying on a Sunday evening, and I get hit with this overwhelming notion. No idea where it came from, but it was, if you don't get out of here right now, something really bad is going to happen. And it was just overwhelming. And I did something very atypical. I literally ran out of that church. 15 minutes later, I'm home, curled up on the couch, bawling like a baby, and don't have a clue why. And from then to January of 2015 was just an absolute horror show. They started throwing meds at me left and right. Seizure meds, Lamictal, here, take this, we'll see what happens. Every combination of other antidepressants that wouldn't kill you with Prozac. And the same thing would happen. I would feel maybe a little better, or at least not worse for a few days, a couple of weeks, and then it would just all go to hell again. My wife's job got moved to Florida. I had to come find a doc. We didn't know anybody here. We didn't have any family. We knew nothing. So I had to go fishing for doctors, which was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
And one doctor almost killed me with thyroid meds. Then I found a nurse practitioner, and she understood me. I at this point in time, I was having extreme difficulties accurately perceiving my environment. My wife would say, "It looks like it's going to be a beautiful day, Dr. Chaffee."
Yeah.
But what I heard with my ears was filtered and twisted by my illness, to where it came to me as, it looks like it's going to be another beautiful day. Great. I love my wife. I would hear that. And honey, what's wrong? And she would look at me like the crazy guy I was and say, well, what do you mean what's wrong? I just told you, it looks like it's going to be a beautiful day. My environment was always altered and never in my favor. So what I was seeing and hearing was not very real most of the time, too much of the time, let's say. Fast forward to January of 2015, I'm only 6 feet tall and I weighed 289 pounds. I was on 6 or 7 different meds at that time. My psychiatrist, the last one I'll ever have, not named Georgia Eade or Chris Palmer, said you should seriously consider electroshock therapy and or a long-term hospitalization. And I had seen ECT patients 30 minutes after they'd had the procedure, and no, you're not turning me into an animated corpse. That was not going to happen. Yeah. And I was very much afraid if I tried the long-term hospitalization, I might go in and never come out.
Yeah.
In comes a friend. I write songs. I release very seldom heard albums. I was working on a blues project with a lady, a really talented singer. His name's Kimmy Wade, and she gets mentioned in every talk I do because without her, you and I aren't speaking. None of this happens. She's watching me disintegrate. And she finally says one day, have you ever thought of medical marijuana? I was like, well, as a musician, it was always around, but I had a bad experience with it when I was young. And beer was legal. What do I need that for? That was kind of my attitude. You know, and I was the guy at band practice or at breaks at the gigs, you know, I'm just not, no, thank you. I don't need that. But so I did a little anecdotal research and found anecdotal evidence that, you know, that's when certain states in America were legalizing medical marijuana programs and things like that. And there was anecdotal evidence similar to what we see in the carnivore community in many ways, that people were experiencing symptom relief. And my wife and I were like, at this point, what do we have to lose? Because I took my meds as prescribed. I didn't want to be one of those chronic people who kept coming back to the hospital because they wouldn't take their meds. I knew the titration schedules. I knew the side effect. I knew I looked in, I was an active participating patient. I did not want to be crazy. So we secured 4 grams of flour. My wife made can of butter, and she made these little cookies, Dr. Chaffee, and I broke the first one in half because those things scared me to death. I ate it. 10 minutes after I took it, I felt like 1,000 suns had lifted off of me. I wasn't high. Just for the first time in God knows how long, I didn't feel like crap anymore. And then the high kicked in about 45 minutes later, and I discovered, much to my surprise, that cannabis treated my symptoms beautifully. Yeah. Many orders of magnitude better than any psychiatric medication I ever did. My anxiety came way down. My mood came way up, and not in a euphoric way. Mm-hmm. I could sleep at night. So much better. My wife comes home the first day, and I have a smile and a giggle on my. I feel good. I haven't felt good in years. And she comes in going, "Who are you?" So that became a thing. Medical marijuana literally made all this possible. 10 days after that, I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, Dr. Chaffee, put my shoes on, and I realized my belly's in the way. And I have a moment of clarity, and I go and see myself in the mirror accurately for the first time, and God knows when. And I look like something from The Walking Dead. Pasty gray, a heart attack or a stroke looked imminent. I mean, I looked horrible. And I told my wife that night, I said, back on Atkins. No, got to. There's no option. It has to happen. And so I went back on Atkins imperfectly. We didn't know you weren't supposed to pour the fat off the meat, or I might have gotten better a lot sooner. But over the next 3 years, I started walking, and I took my time because I knew I was at great risk for injury. Figured out, walking the dog, half a block here, a block there, and into 2 blocks, 4 blocks. Well, how far am I actually walking? And then I figured out how far it was, a half mile from my house, so that I could do a mile walk really easy. And that went into 2-mile walks and into 4-mile walks. And over the next 3 years, I walked off 94 pounds. By the end of 2015, I was off the antipsychotics and antidepressants. Into 2016, I was off the Ativan. That was troublesome. The day after I took my last 1/8 of a milligram, I woke up with vertigo, which I had to deal with for 3 months. Thanks, benzodiazepine withdrawal. And by the end of 2017, I was off the trazodone and sleeping drug-free. Since 2017, I've not had any pharmaceuticals of any kind except for 1 run of antibiotics when I had an upper respiratory infection. in the fall of 2019. I have been completely pharmaceutical free at age 61 since then. But I'm still, medical marijuana made life better, but it didn't heal or fix anything.
Right.
Then this same friend who suggested I look into cannabis messages me in May of 2018 going, you got to see every video by this guy named Dr. Jordan Peterson. I'm like, okay. And I become an instant fan. Back then when you first did a search for him, you got the Jordan Peterson Destroys collection.
Yeah.
Where he just renders people mute with logic and common sense. I could watch that thing he did with that lady in the UK over and over again and never stop laughing. I mean, it's just it was brilliant. And I loved what he had to say about personal responsibility and telling the truth, or at least not lying. I believe him to be somebody of great integrity. And part of my 420 regimen was eat a cookie and go watch Jordan Peterson video. And I came across a 30-minute cutout of him on Joe Rogan. And he starts talking about how his daughter figured out if she only ate beef, salt, and water, that her chronic arthritis and depression symptoms would go into remission. Now, if this is anybody but Jordan Peterson telling me this, that's crazy. I would have changed the channel in a heartbeat. That's nuts. Are you? No. Some doctor would have said something to me. Some medical professional over these last 40 years would have surely told me about this. But it was Jordan Peterson. And he's a man of great integrity.
He is.
Who I owe so much to. I'm sorry, I got to meet him Sunday, and I'm still processing all of that. It's a very emotional thing.
That's amazing.
And so I had my wife watch the video with me to make sure I was really hearing what I was hearing. Oh, yeah, he's really saying that. So I start investigating, and the next video I come across is Sean Baker on Joe Rogan. And I watched the dietary component of that interview 50 times, because now I'm thinking there's got to be a flaw in the logic here, because I did not want to get psyched up about something that was invalid.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find any flaws in anything. There were no logical errors there whatsoever. And then I heard a talk from Amber O'Hearn that she gave at Keto Fest in 2017. It's still up. I looked for it the other day. Where she explained in a way this guitar player could understand how as a species we literally came down out of the trees eating meat, how we grew these energy demanding brains, how our skeletal structure developed into what we see it today. And I was like, I can't not try this.
Yeah.
I did a little more research on how to do it successfully, which I found at the Zeroing In on Health Facebook group that's where Kelly Hogan and Charles Washington and all those 10-year plus carnivores hang out. And I learned only eat when you're hungry. When you're hungry, only eat meat until you're not another bite full. Only eat the meat you crave and can't afford. And under no circumstance do you put a sweet taste into your mouth. I could follow those directions in my sleep all day, every day. It's going to keep me from being crazy. That's easy, because I looked at keto and my head just started spinning. You got to measure this, macro that.
Oh, yeah.
No, that was not, I couldn't process that. So July 16th, 2018 was day one, eating meat and drinking water. And today is my 1355th day eating meat and drinking water, and I haven't missed a day in that time.
Nice.
0 cheat days, none. On the 10th day, I woke up without joint pain for the first time as an adult. Now, I was never diagnosed as arthritic, but, I'd fallen down and gone boom a few times over the first 57 years of my life. And, I was ambulatory, but I had places that hurt a lot. My shoulders, my knees. I woke up without joint pain. I felt like a little boy again. my morning walk, I'm skipping and giggling for half of it because it feels good and it doesn't hurt. Wow, who knew that was going to happen? And then on the 24th day, and I always get emotional about this, I can't not do it. I'm taking a walk. It's not even light out yet. And it's like somebody flipped the switch, Dr. Chaffee. And all that rage and all that anger, frustration, shadowy darkness, what all the things that kept me from becoming the human I always wanted to be, it all just went away. It's gone. And it was replaced by a waterfall of joy that has not left me, not for one stinking moment since. And that's why I do these talks, because people need to know you're not broken. Mom and dad didn't make a mistake. You're not a genetic error or an outlier. You were just like the rest of us, taught to eat things we never should have eaten. We should have never put those things into our mouth under the false premise it's healthy. It's healthy to eat all that fiber. Let's push fiber through at all costs. People need to know you don't have to suffer from chronic illness forever. You don't have to be a prisoner to medication for the rest of your life. And that's why I do these. And I thank you very much for the chance to share that, my experience.
Well, thank you. And thank you for sharing that. That's, it's, people, when we talk about these sorts of things, they don't understand just how huge of an impact it can have on people's lives, or maybe they just don't think it's possible to. Like you said, you thought you made some, positive inroads and mental changes on how you're approaching things, which is all very, very healthy and very, very good. And so people say, well, that's probably what it was. Well, maybe, something else happened. How could it possibly affect their lives that much? But, it is true. And we see so many people, and, your story there is, such a dramatic case of serious depression. And there are a lot of people that suffer with depression. Unfortunately, that number is growing, but major depression is its own thing entirely. My mother was very depressed during my early childhood. She got postpartum depression after she had me, and was, basically just checked out. And for, my entire childhood, it was, it was, dealing with that. And she was very upset. She sort of let a couple hints, past the radar that, something was wrong, but, she really kept it to herself. And since then, she basically says she was actually put on Prozac in the late 80s. And she said if Prozac hadn't come out when it did, she probably, would have taken her own life. She said it literally saved her life. And so thankfully she did get some benefit from that. But it's, it's a devastating illness. And, to be able to get rid of it like that and actually, rediscover your happiness, it's absolutely fantastic. And I thank you very much for sharing that. And I'm really happy that happened for you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been an incredible experience, and it hasn't stopped getting better. Every day is better than the day before. And I can't explain that in any, it's something that has to be experienced. It's something I can't put words to in a way that does it justice. And I experience every day what I call effortless daily happiness every day. I wake up in a fabulous mood. I'm excited about what the day holds for me. I know I'm going to get to play my guitar for 5 or 6 hours. I know I'm going to get to take a walk in the Florida sunshine and suck in. I'm now a sunshine junkie. I can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
Because I feel so good while I'm in the sun. I've learned about grounding through this way of eating. And then that's another thing that I want people to know about. It's a natural, inexpensive way to reduce inflammation. Go take a walk in the grass or sit in a chair with your feet in the dirt for 30 minutes every day, and you're done.
Yeah.
and inflammation will come down. I'm sleeping so much better since I started doing that.
Mhm.
I go to bed at night and I wake up in the same position in the morning I lay down in, where I used to wrestle all night. I could get wrapped up in the bottom sheet, drove my wife nuts. Speaking of my wife, if there was ever somebody who's earned their place in heaven, it's her, because she had to put up with me when I was very hard to live with. And I'm always grateful, and I always mention that, because I even told Dr. Peterson that. I said, she's earned her spot in heaven because she put up with me. And he said, oh,
Yeah.
well, I can imagine. Um, it's just transformed our lives. My wife uh, is a month behind me in carnivore. I joke about she waited 30 days to see if it was going to kill me or not.
just,
And
just sent you in first,
yeah,
canary in the coal mine.
kind of like when the male deer sends the female across the road to see if she makes it.
Yeah.
Um, but she noticed the wrinkles in my face were starting to smooth out. And then suddenly she wasn't the skinniest one in the house anymore. And she had osteoarthritis in both her shoulders and in both her hands. And in 30 days, it was gone,
Yeah.
just gone. And what it's done for us, our marriage, I mean, good grief. It's at times it's like we live in a fairy tale now.
Yeah.
You
Well, that's
know,
great.
everything is so good. She's 63, I'm 61. When you only eat meat and drink water, you come into hormonal balance and all of your plumbing works as designed.
Yeah.
So it's like we feel like we're 20 without the stupidity and ignorance of being 20. And our private life is just beyond words wonderful.
Great.
It's just, I haven't experienced a moment of downside living this way, Dr. Chaffee, not one moment.
Fantastic. So you wouldn't be in that camp, that recent conversion that says that if you're carnivore for too long, you don't eat carbs or honey for too long, that you'll eventually get detrimental health reverberations and die.
Oh, yeah, I
Hypothyroidism and low testosterone.
I get so frustrated. I coach for Rivero Health, formerly MeatRx. I've been doing that, and I facilitate 2 mental health meetings here every week. Um, and I have had too many clients come to me saying, "But so and so said, honey, what do you think about honey? And this, when do we get to eat honey?" And I'm just like, oh, because people need to understand, you know, in my experience, and as I understand things from getting to study from people like Georgia Ede and Amy Berger, yourself and others, Dr. Baker, so many more, it's about inflammation in your brain. And sugar's inflammatory. It's never not inflammatory. What kind of game are you playing with yourself? People like me, if a spoonful of honey, I'd be in the psych ward before the sun went down. It's like rat poison to me.
Yeah.
I can't risk that. There's no taste, no texture, no social setting worth me risking my sanity for.
Yeah.
Period. Why would you tell people? Well, I think I know why that person is saying these things, because they have a sugar addiction and they like making money, and they found out they can make more money and enjoy their sugar addiction by saying these things. Now, I could be wrong. I don't know that to a certainty, but that's my feeling. Eat meat, drink water,
Yeah.
heal. And once you heal, yeah, you might be able to add things back. Excuse me. But if it was inflammatory yesterday, it's going to be inflammatory today. And you might be able to tolerate it for a while tomorrow, but eventually you're going to be right back where you just crawled out of.
Yeah. And the thing is too, is that, the argument is that not that you can have some sugar or honey or fruit sometimes, but that you should, and that you can't possibly thrive or survive without it, that this is a detriment to your health, and that you have to have, a certain amount of carbohydrates every single day. And the best way of getting that is through honey or fruit somehow. But, you know, I mean, you're living proof. I'm living proof. Dr. Baker's living proof. Certainly Charles Washington and Kelly Hogan, who've been doing this stuff way longer than any of us have. And certainly these other proponents of carnivore-ish way of eating, you know, they haven't had these problems. You know, they simply haven't. And so when you look at that and you look at the huge abundance of populations, both now and historically, that don't eat any plants, don't eat any sugar, don't eat any honey, like the Maasai, but, you know, more specifically like the Inuits. They don't have any honey to begin with. They don't have any fruit to begin with. And all our ancestors throughout the ice ages, you know, where was their honey and fruit? You know, they didn't have it. And so if you couldn't survive, if you couldn't, you know, thrive, you know, without, and your hormonal health would have been damaged, your testosterone would have been down, your thyroid would have been down. You don't survive on low thyroid generationally. You can't. It's not possible. You know, your children will get cretinism. Even if you survive, your kids will be severely damaged by this, and they won't be able to procreate. So yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but I'm glad that you know, that you're not dying of hormonal of hormonal damage. And, you know, and in your coaching experience, you know, have you seen this? Have you seen people be long-term carnivore and then all of a sudden start getting hormonal issues and damaging themselves?
No, I haven't seen that out of anybody. I mean, I'm sure there's probably, 1% or half of 1% of folks who try this way of eating and get so far along and then they discover some underlying thing. I mean, because anything's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned, there are no total absolutes in any of this, and it's always specific to the individual. So it is possible. I just haven't seen it. I haven't heard about it. I've not, run into anyone. I was 6 years carnivore, and then my kidneys started to crap out. I haven't read, I've heard all the warnings. Oh, your kidneys are going to give out on you. That's going to be what takes you down, man. No.
Yeah, and yet,
here I am.
Yeah.
How do you? That's the thing that always gets me. Whether it's plant-based people, the dietitians protecting the revenue stream, whoever. You can't destroy yourself while feeling this good. How do you make that work?
Yeah.
I feel amazing. I don't supplement. I don't take anything. I got an L5 that's pushed out a little far. It's not quite bulging. It's just an annoyance once in a while. And every now and then, I'm a musician. I carry a chunk of wood around my neck for 4 hours a night, having fun playing. But my lower back starts complaining after about the third hour. I might have to take a Motrin once in a while. But that's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing diet related that is harming me at all. And my quality of life is insanely good. I mean, it's through the roof.
Yeah.
And I'm harming myself? Come on. Laughable.
Well, and that's the thing, we have, I think, Dr. Baker said once, the plural of anecdote is data. And so we say, people just say, oh, well, yeah, you do that, but that's your anecdotal, that's just an anecdotal reference. I don't really care, the only thing I'm worried about is my anecdotal experience. That's it. I don't really give a crap, how many studies say what, if I do that and that makes me feel like garbage, and I do this and it makes me, healthy and strong and virile. That's what I'm going to do. Like, oh, but it's anecdotal. You better look at that study. I'm like, get out, like even Einstein, he said that, everyone tries to just prove things, and it's just like, oh, well, I have this proof. Look at this study and this proves this. And it's like, well, it doesn't prove a damn thing, actually. And even Einstein, when he would prove something mathematically and then go out into the real world and look at it anecdotally and see like, oh, does this work? No, it doesn't. Throw it out, and because, he was actually smart enough to realize, like, Richard Feynman said, one of his colleagues in the Manhattan Project, was it doesn't matter how brilliant your theory is, and it doesn't matter how smart you are. If it doesn't agree with experiment, it's wrong. And so they proved all sorts of nonsense, and yet it's wrong. So, that's the only thing I worry about. And the fact of the matter is that, you're healthy, you're thriving, you're feeling better than you ever have. So, who cares what they have to say, really? Like they can, poo-poo your anecdotal experience, but your anecdotal experience is your life. And so I think that actually trumps whatever little, nutritional epidemiology study that they put out there. That's one of the things I think with the dietitians. I think a lot of them, I think some of them are simply just trying to justify, wasting, years of their life studying things that are just wrong. And so they really don't want to have to admit that to themselves. And then, they just go, no, 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 but it has to be true. And they really push the line. But, I've had dietitians that I've, debated with and gotten to the end of it. I was a friend of mine. She was actually finishing her PhD in nutritional sciences. And, she's a PhD candidate. And so she'd been doing this for a very long time. And she was a, whole food vegan, really pushed that angle for years and years and years. Eventually, we just went point for point, study for study. And at the end of it, I finally sort of, got through to her, and she just sort of sat there in like stunned silence and went, my entire education was a lie. I was like, I know it was a lie. Like you've proven it's a lie. Like, like, this can't be true. This can't be what it is. You've proven it, and you show me the studies. Like I've seen them. Like it's wrong. It's just wrong. And like they had a, real dilemma on their hands, because they were about to go into, practice as a hospital dietitian. And they're like, but you as a dietitian, you have to push what's in the textbook. And she's like, I know the textbook's wrong. Like I can't then say that it's right, because this is going to hurt people. So, she had that, introspection. And, I think it's scary though, because when you come to that realization, you really only have one honest choice, which is to just get out of the whole field and, or at least, try to revamp it and show people what's going on. Like, like people are, like there's, Nutrition with Judy, she's a nutritionist, and she absolutely, is a proponent of a carnivore diet, which is great. But, it's going to be very difficult to get, an industry job or job in the hospital as a nutritionist when you don't push what the hospital wants you to, because they have nutritional guidelines, they have nutritional practices that are just horrendous. And like I've written letters to the hospital services. I mean, guess how many of those I've gotten returned? How many? Like I just, no one's ever, like I've had someone's like, oh yes, we happily send this on and we'll get back to you. I haven't heard a word from these people. But I see it all the time in the hospital, these people having, trays put up in front of them that it's just sugary carbs. Like that's it. And I was looking at that, and I'm like that they're feeding you what, brought you in here in the first place.
Exactly. It defies logic. And they sell you the garbage, they get you addicted to it through marketing and scientific research. I mean, people need to look up what a bliss point is with regards to carbs and whatnot, and these products that are being made, and, the almond milk and all that garbage. It's all designed to hit your bliss point in your brain to keep you addicted and keep you addicted.
Yeah.
And when I realized that, I mean, all sorts of dominoes started falling in my head, seeing just, this is not an accident. This is deliberate, willful misinformation and false,
yeah, it is.
and false testimony that this is healthy for you, when the exact opposite is actually the case.
Yeah.
And one of the wonderful things about this, I'm a musician. I'm not a scientist. I don't talk science. I only speak from my experience, but I can read and I can learn and I can do a little math. This way of eating gives you the clarity of thought to be able to see through the BS in a way that you never could before. And I think that's something else that baffles those who can't understand why we won't capitulate to their wisdom, because they're credentialed. I've got 65 initials after my name now from all these look at all these PhDs and these master theses and these books, etc. Pay attention to me. I know what I'm talking about. But yeah, you can't explain me away. None of them can explain me. I challenge every one of those people. If what you're saying is true, why am I thriving? Why am I not dead yet? Why
Yeah.
am I not having, I was warned, you're going to hope you like going to the emergency room to unclog your arteries. Get
Yeah.
real. My lipids, my lab work, it gets better every time I have somebody pay for it. I get new lab work every couple of years, and my lipids are better than when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're telling me that I'm destroying myself?
Yeah.
The cognitive dissonance here is just, it's frightening. It really is, because we're bombarded constantly with the marketing. How many drug commercials do you see? Do you ever see a drug commercial that talks about eliminating your symptoms and healing you?
No.
You never will,
Yeah.
because we got to manage your symptoms so that we can keep making money every day, every month from you and then your family. And then we'll sell you the food products, which are more garbage, under the notion that it'll help fix what the original garbage we sold you did to you. And
Yeah.
it's just crazy. And all we need to do is learn to separate ourselves from that, take control of our health, eating meat, drinking water, or at least following a ketogenic lifestyle, which you can do with keto without being just meat and water like I am, and take control of your health and separate yourself from the disease management system. We don't have to participate in it if we're taking care of ourselves. Now,
Yeah.
if you have an injury, I have an accident and break a leg or something, well, yeah, I need medical care then to set the leg, and then I'll heal.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I don't need to be a part of that system anymore. And you don't have to do so. You don't have to see a doctor 3 times a year.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? That's how I judge my health, is how I feel. Or do I need to donate a fee every year just to find out, oh, Brett, you feel great? Well, I knew that. I know that now.
Yeah.
It's just so disordered when you stop and look at it.
Yeah.
How we got here is just amazing to me.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. We used to just treat major accidents, infectious disease, and that was the main part of the world. Was just dealing with infections and plagues and then injuries, wars, birth, childhood diseases. Yeah, pregnancy and childbirth, that was a major danger as well. And then poisonings. You get bitten by something, or you eat some plant that was harmful, or you get stuck by something that was poisonous, and you're dealing with that. And now it's all chronic disease. And the history of humanity, we have not had these chronic diseases in the numbers that we have them now. Not even close. Nothing resembling what we have now. And we're coming up with new ones all the time. Like, oh wow, look at this crazy thing that we've just never seen before. Doctors would make their name by discovering a new disease or a new anatomical variant, or doing dissections on cadavers and finding out something different, something new, something we haven't seen before. That's how you made your name. And in fact, that's how you immortalize your name, because a lot of these things are named after those doctors. And we have a Colles fracture, is a certain way of falling and breaking your wrist in a certain way, and you fix it in a certain way, and you treat it in a certain way. That was named after a guy in the 1800s who came up with this, and now his name is there forever. So people really wanted to do this, and people still want to do this, and they are finding things. And we deal with this the hubris of the current generation that says, oh, we just probably didn't notice it before. But that's, of course we would have, and some of these people are, some of it's like, people that just think that, anyone who's over 25 is an idiot. And, well, you weren't born with an iPhone in your hand. Well, okay. I was just like, okay, well, they actually invented iPhones. So what have you done for the world? You know how to use an iPhone. Great. That's awesome. I'm happy for you. You can access all the information in the world, but you didn't create any of it. You didn't discover any of it. And the people that came before us did. And so, you know, and it's funny too, because some of these people, some of these people saying, oh, we probably just didn't notice it, are like the researchers and the doctors who lived through this. And it's like, you're saying that you just noticed this now, you just started paying attention? Really? You know? So yeah, it's a bit shocking. And you know, Chris Rock, I think, you know, called it out in the 90s about what you were saying with you know, the different companies just trying to manage diseases as opposed to curing diseases. And he said that you know, that's not what they want to do. They just want to, you know, manage your symptoms. They want your disease to keep going, but they don't want to cure it. They said that, you know, the drug companies are still pissed they cured polio. You know, that could have been a, you know, moneymaker forever, just treating polio. So they want to treat diseases, not cure diseases. Whereas, you know, obviously the point is to cure diseases and to just prevent them from even happening. You know, our genetics did not change in such a way that these diseases, you know, came about that way. And there's just nothing we can do about it. Something happened in our environment. You know, these so-called diseases, you know, tripled, quadrupled, quintupled, or more in a span of 20 years. That doesn't happen except for environmental exposure. And so this is an exposure. This is a poisoning. This is something that, you know, if it can expose you to this and cause these problems, you can take away that exposure, and those problems will go away. Now, maybe there's damage done. That can happen, but at least it will stop the ongoing torment on your body.
I tell all my coaching clients, and I say this in every mental health meeting that I facilitate, the objective here is to not get better, but to become well. For all of us to be able to live our life optimally, for it to have our brains. Most people, my brain never functioned optimally until I was 57 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it's improved every day since that day. I lost my depression symptoms, and 5 minutes later I lost the anxiety, and 10 months later I lost the insomnia, and it's never come back.
Mm-hmm.
None of it has ever come back. So this is, in my mind, and my wife's symptoms have never come back.
Yeah.
And we're just eating. We're not taking any medicines. We're not, no need to supplement. We're not doing some kind of weird voodoo dance at 3 a.m. every night around a campfire. We're just doing what ancestral man did. What did our ancestors 100,000 years ago do? They ate meat.
Yeah.
That was it. There was no seasonal vegetables. I mean, seriously, people don't understand all these vegetables that we have today. They've been genetically modified to be what they are, and so that they're more easily marketed and they more sweetness in them. So, hey, we can hook you that way.
Yeah.
It's just so crazy to think 100,000 years ago, we slept on the ground, we ate on the ground, we were always grounded, we were always in touch. And then synthetic footwear came out and everybody got insulated. And then if you stop and look, I think you'll find some correlation between when the disease started to pick up. The further and further we move away from these ancestral truths, the worse off we become. It's just, so much has been repressed, Dr. Chaffee. We need to keep getting the word out, because as Dr. Baker always says, we're going to win this war from the ground up, not from the top down.
No, not going to happen that way. No, the top's too comfortable being at the top.
Yes, with too much power.
Yeah. And if they were smart, they'd start looking around and saying, oh, how can we change the healthcare model to facilitate this and actually help people, but actually turn a profit. I mean, that would be great. Dr. Baker is looking at expanding Rivero, which I think is fantastic, because it's a model that people are going to get behind, because once they find out that you can actually get well and you don't need to suffer with chronic diseases and just take medications and get surgeries for the rest of your life, of course people are going to want to do that. And so maybe it's not the same profit model as all these interventions and all these horrifically expensive drugs, but you're also not putting in $2 billion on R&D either, and you can put those big brains to use doing something useful and doing something that's actually going to benefit society and benefit humanity and make money on it. And I'm all for that. I'm all for the incentive model of you earning something, but do it the right way. Do it doing something that's profitable for people, as opposed to just snake oil. You don't have to sell a con in order to get rich. Look at Rockefeller. I know certain people have problems with Rockefeller, but look at how he made money. He became vastly wealthy by making kerosene cheaper. He said he wanted to get the price of kerosene down so low by all these different tricks in manufacturing and refining that everyone in America, every household in America could afford kerosene. That was very important to him. And he was able to do it. And because he was able to do that, every house in America was buying kerosene from him. So he became fabulously wealthy. And he did it the right way. The people that have been, the wealthiest have provided the most benefit for people, and then maybe they just go crazy at the end of it, like Bill Gates trying to, black out the sun with like, Jesus, like, what are you doing? Like that, that's literally how every extinction episode in the history of the earth happened. Some volcano or asteroid hits the earth and just pops up a cloud of dust and shuts off the energy from the sun, and just everything dies off. Like, why would you want to replicate that?
Bill Gates is so disturbingly disordered. It's just beyond words. And then, what rational person is going to look at him and think, I need to take dietary advice from this man?
Yeah. And the thing is too, is for all the talk about fake meat and everything like that, I happen to grow up near where Bill Gates lives. And I actually know for a fact he goes to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse in Bellevue all the time. Okay.
He's not eating that synthetic beef.
Hell no, he's not eating that nonsense. He's like, that's for you. Like, he's keeping the steaks for him. Yeah, I mean, he's the largest, owner of farmland in America now. So, single person. So, I'm sure he'll have a ranch for his own cattle.
Oh, no doubt. He's probably got 3 or 4 already. Yeah. It's so ridiculous. And the scary thing to me, Dr. Chaffee, is how easily and how much younger people are swayed to believe these things, because they are so inflamed all the time. And I don't know about how it is for you, but I have a harder time talking to people with what I call sugar brain, because they're not always very logical.
Yeah.
And you've got to really listen closely to figure out what they mean when they say things that you're like, on the surface, like, well, that's kind of nuts. Yeah. And at first I thought it was just my hubris at play. But no, it's really not that, and it kind of, my wife and I figured out all those years before cell phones, why would people sit at a green light and not step on the gas? We figured it out. It's brain fog.
Yeah.
People are in a fog. How would they know? I mean, I was guilty of it. And this is before cell phones. Now everybody wants to blame everything except on what is really going on. Because, geez, we'd have to hold people responsible. It's and it has gotten so much worse. And, earlier, mental illness used to be so rare that if somebody came down with something, schizophrenic might show up in a village somewhere, they were treated as if they were holy, because it was so rare and special, and they were considered to be touched. And in a lot of societies, it's and now, who do we know that hasn't had a bout of mental illness, or doesn't have 3 or 4 or 5 relatives who are dealing with mental illness every day?
Yeah. It
used to be, all of this, Alzheimer's used to be rare, because who could afford to eat all that sugar?
Yeah. So now you're saying you're just meat and water. Is that right?
Absolutely. I have only consumed meat and water for 1,355 straight days, and I have had no inclination to ever deviate from that.
Any particular cuts or animals that you prefer?
I started out eating a variety of meats, but I always had bacon because when I was researching this, I discovered the biggest number one complaint for people who fail at the beginning is I got tired of just eating meat. And bacon had never been my favorite meat,
Hmm.
but I realized there was never a meal with that bacon was on the plate that I didn't enjoy. So I made sure I would always have two meats, and one of them would always be bacon. Bacon goes great with everything, with shrimp, with fish, with short pork shoulder roast. Uh, Had my wife would get these big chunks of London broil and cut those up into steaks in the beginning. I gave up eggs after the second week because they stopped being satisfying. I haven't had eggs since July of 2018.
Hmm.
I also haven't had a headache since July of 2018.
Oh,
That's,
nice.
that's pretty crazy. Uh, but in December of 2018, I let my intuition lead me, which is something else I encourage people to do. Spend less time up here. Trust your gut. It will never mislead you. And I discovered these rolls of 90, 10 ground beef. And they just jumped out at me, pick me up, look at me. And I did. And I told my wife, I said, I need to take one of these home and eat it.
Yeah.
And I knew after the second bite, this is what I've been looking for all along. It was satisfying. I am not just full. I don't just eat to satiation. I'm satisfied. Every meal is very satisfying. I'm full. I'm contented. And then that's when my healing really kind of went into turbo mode after that,
Nice.
because my body was finally getting what it had been looking for all along. And that's what I encourage people to do. You know, you're not sure what kind of meat you crave or what your body is really wanting. Go to the biggest meat department in your area and look around, turn your intellect off and listen to your body and see what jumps out at you. And inevitably, when people do that, they end up finding a type of meat, whether it's pork, fish, whatever. I don't care. We know red meat tends to heal people more, but people have gotten better on fish. People have
Yeah.
gotten better on pork, you know, whatever works for you, whatever you can afford. It's
Yeah.
all, like Dr. Baker says, it's always going to be better to eat pork or fish or whatever than to eat ice cream.
Yeah. Well, that's what I tell people, like, well, what sort of meat and what this, and I was like, well, I like beef. I prefer beef. That's what makes me feel the best. That's what gives me the best energy. And, like yourself, I've been sort of on the sharp end of this for a number of years where I can tell the difference between different meats. And, I feel better on beef than I do on, eggs and bacon. I just do. And, or lamb even, and chicken, certainly chicken. And, but, but like, but then, I talk to people and they, say like, well, what should I eat and what should I do? And it's like, look, any of these meats are good. You just do like, Baker says, the meat that you enjoy makes you feel the best and you can afford, because, whatever meat you're eating, that is going to be good for you. And all plants, every plant is bad for you. All meat is good for you. So it really doesn't matter. So as long as you don't eat plants and you avoid that. So that's why I put the impetus on what not to eat as opposed to what to eat. And, if people want to eat, little things here and there, I know Charles Washington, says that, if you want to put some seasonings or sauces or whatever, if that can keep you eating meat and keep you interested, then go for it. I don't have a problem with that. I talk about things in respect to what I believe is optimal. And what I believe is the the best way of healing your body and living. And then if you want to do something outside of that, then do it. I really don't care. It's just, this is what I've found to be the best way you can do it. And if that's something that you like, if you like being optimal, then go for it. And I mean, that's how I like to live, so, and to do with the fruit and honey. If you want to eat fruit and honey, like, go for it. I just caution people because, fruit and honey have sugar, and fructose is addictive. It is a drug, and it will be addictive to you. And a little bit of fruit and honey can turn into a lot of fruit and honey real quick. And then all of a sudden you're carb craving, and you start eating other things, and you slip off the wagon. I've spoken to so many people about this. The last time I was on with Dr. Baker, it must have been a year or more ago. And we were talking about that. And, he sort of asked me, like, is there anything going on that you want to talk about? I'm like, yes, actually, there's a lot of people talking about, how you should start eating, fruit and honey. And I think that's wild, and we just went into it, all the reasons why, and just all the hard data behind it. Like, we have very strong evidence. It's probably one of the stronger pieces of, or bodies of evidence that we have in the nutritional sciences, but it's actual biochemistry. We have actual biochemical evidence behind this. And then human models, human studies with controlled human studies that actually meet the criteria for causation between fructose and metabolic syndrome. Okay, so and maybe you say, well, the fructose from fruit and honey, well, that's good for you, though. Like, says who?
Yeah.
Like, based on what? Like, what hard evidence do you have to say that? That's Thomas Sowell is one of my favorite writers and thinkers of just all time. I think he's just the most brilliant and well-developed thinker that America has ever produced, certainly. And that's one of the, he has three sort of questions, to check something against. And one of those is, what hard evidence do you have? And then compared to what? And at what cost? You want to do this? Okay, what's it going to cost you? Well, if it just saves one life, then it's worth it. Well, no, actually, because you've actually killed 500,000 other people by saving that one life from this thing that you're worried about, but you don't look at those costs. And you're comparing apples to oranges, and you have no hard evidence. So, you have to ask these things. You have to test these ideas. When someone puts something towards you, even if you want to agree with it, you have to test these things. You have to ask these things. You have to try to disprove them. That's what science really is. People don't get that. Well, trust the science. That's a nonsense. You don't trust the science. You try to disprove your theory. That is science. And you try to create studies and trials in order to disprove your idea. Because if you can't disprove it, well, then, you're in pretty good footing, but they don't try to do that. They try to cherry pick and lie and hide the truth so that whatever they're pushing can look good. But what you have to do is you have to try to disprove it. And so there is no trusting this. I don't trust shit.
Seriously.
Absolutely.
Seriously, yes. I was listening to that. You talk about that stuff, and I real science questions everything endlessly. It never stops questioning.
Yeah.
And this, that's why this follow the science, except this is, the science is certain. No, it's never certain.
Never certain. Never.
There's only few things that are certain, like 1 + 1 is always going to equal 2.
Yeah.
That's a certainty. That's a rare thing.
Well, unless you're a Harvard professor of mathematics, and somehow.
And then the other thing is, Ken Berry put out this thing a few years ago that just always just kills me when I think about it. It's a picture of a fructose molecule next to a sucrose molecule. And he said, point out the difference. Show me which one is healthy.
Yeah.
They're identical. They're identical.
Yeah.
And you're going to say that fructose is better for you? Are you serious? There's no way you can make that argument. I'm not a medical anything, and I can see the disordered thinking in that.
Yeah, well, I think it was like, here's the fructose molecule from fruit or honey, and here's the one from high fructose corn syrup. And it's like, which one of these is good for you? It's like, yeah, well, that's it.
Same thing.
Yeah, well, and that's it. You say that, well, maybe in and honey, it's good for you then. Okay, well, maybe, but like you actually have to prove that, or at least provide some semblance of evidence for it. And the body of evidence right now shows that it's not good for you, and that chemical is harmful. There's, cyanide is bad for you. Well, maybe the cyanide in almonds is good for you. Well, you don't know. Like, yeah, maybe, but like, you're gonna have to actually do some work and actually show that before, you get me to eat a lethal dose of cyanide from those stupid almonds, or cassava melon. Well, maybe, people, oh, so many people eat cassava melon. Yeah, and they do it very carefully, and if they don't, they die. Okay. So, well, but maybe, yeah, maybe, but, prove it, buddy. It's on you. Um, a lot of people say it's like, oh, it's very restrictive. And I get, people saying, well, people who watch my videos by and large actually, seem, quite positive in my approach, which is like, just give it a try. You will actually feel so much better when you just get the last bits out of your system. And so a lot of people have been encouraged to try that. And then they all report back to me like, wow, actually, I didn't realize it, but it's actually made a huge difference. And I'm really happy when people can do that. Not everybody can, that's fine, but it's nice when people can, and they can see how much benefit that is. And then some people sort of see a bit of stuff, or I'm on someone else's show, and they just go, oh, I don't like that. It's too restrictive. He's just going to push people away from it. I'm like, well, first of all, I've never said that you have to do this or nothing. I never said that, it's all or nothing. And like, you have to do everything strict, or, you're not allowed to eat any meat at all. You have to be a whole food vegan. I don't say that. I just tell people what I think is a good way of doing it. And they can do whatever they want. But a lot of people talk about how restrictive it is. And, I think that, I think that it actually allows you to, I think it makes it so much simpler. It just allows you to just be in this moment. You're just eating meat. You're not like, oh, maybe I can have, and maybe I can do this. When you have these soft edges that you can push and you can change, and they're malleable. I remember you, saying something on Facebook. You made, I believe it was a video, and you put it up talking about restriction and about calling it a restricted diet. Can you tell us a bit about that? Because I thought that was brilliant.
This way of eating is not restrictive. Depression is restrictive.
Yeah.
Something else that's really restrictive. Anxiety is restrictive. Arthritis is restrictive. Type 2 diabetes is restrictive. Insomnia is restrictive. Bipolar disorder is restrictive. I mean, we can just go down the list of those are restrictive illnesses.
Yeah.
You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. You can't go out in the sun. You can't, don't go out in the rain. Don't do this, don't do that. With all of those things, they're extremely restrictive. The carnivore way of eating is the most liberating thing in the world because you're free of all of that.
Yeah.
There's nothing I cannot do if I have the desire to attempt it. Why not? I mean, I get to perform live music again. I had to take 15 years off from playing because nobody would work with me. I was too difficult to get along with. And now I'm a professional. The people pay me money to do what I love the most. And I'm able to do it at a much higher level than I ever could before. This is not restriction, kids. This is liberation. Yeah. This is experiencing what you've always wanted to experience.
Yeah. And
so that's what I think about restriction. Yeah. It's just a bunch of hooey.
I think that's a great way of looking at it too. And it's just, it's how you approach it, and you're looking at that. I mean, like, it's the pessimistic sort of attitude. You're looking at all the things that you can't do and how horrible it is, instead of looking at all the benefits that you just said, and I think that's just it. It's just, you're looking at things right way around. And, what I think is restrictive is eating, 5 times a day and still being hungry throughout the whole time and having to go to the bathroom 13 times. I think that's restrictive. Running out of toilet paper during a pandemic, that's restrictive, So yeah, I don't find this restrictive at all. I agree. I find it very liberating. I eat once a day. I have hours of my day that are back to me that I'm not thinking about preparing or eating food. I just do things. I'm not restricted to only my only social events or only revolving around food and drink. I actually go and do things, and
Same.
yeah, exactly. And, I enjoy that. I enjoy interpersonal, connections, and I enjoy doing things with people. I enjoy being active. I enjoy, reading. I enjoy, the work that I do. And it's good that I enjoy the work that I do, because that's basically all that I do. And so, it provides me the energy and the ability and the time to actually focus on what's important in my life. And it sounds like you're doing the same.
Thank you, Dr. Chaffee. I really enjoyed this conversation immensely. I have a feeling you and I could wax eloquent for hours and hours and hours on
Probably.
all of this. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope that you keep doing what you're doing, because we need your young, healthy, strong force in the carnivore community, preaching the gospel of meat, as it were.
Yeah.
And we need more of that. We need more professionals like yourself out there talking about how you can eliminate metabolic dysfunction just with a lifestyle change. And you don't have to spend gazillions of dollars on medicines every month. And
Yeah,
it's just,
that's
it's,
freeing.
yes, that yeah, talk about liberating.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed this immensely, but I need to go here in a
I
second
know.
because I need to talk to my mother. It's my morning to talk to mom.
Very good. Well, I think that's yeah, I think it's probably good place to stop as any. Brett, I really enjoyed speaking with you. I'm glad that we finally were able to do it. Thank you very much for coming on. Thank you very much for sharing your story. I hope that people find that helpful and inspiring, so that they too can deal with their issues and get well again. So thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much, Dr. Chaffee, for this chance to share my story. And people have any questions, I answer all my private messages on Instagram. You can find me at thankful.carnivore. And if you have questions, want to know how to start this way of eating, have concerns, don't hesitate to reach out, because that's why I do this. I want people to know what is possible, and you can be as liberated as you've ever been in your life by eating meat and drinking water.
Good. And so, yeah, and what's the best way to get a hold of you? Is it that website, or what are all your?
Yeah, thankful.carnivore on Instagram is the
Mhm.
best place to get me. You can also find me under my full name, Brett Lloyd, on Facebook. I do answer messages there as well. It's just I seem to have a better access via Instagram than I do with the other platforms. And seriously, don't hesitate to reach out, because one of the most heartwarming messages I ever got after I started doing this was a young man sent me a voice message thanking me for an interview I did with Scott Mislinski on the Carnivore Cast, that after he heard what I had to say, he no longer wanted to kill himself.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Wow.
So after you get a message like that, this becomes a permanent vocation. You can't give that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll put those in the description as well, so people can find you. And as far as coaching is concerned, do they get you through Rivero Health, or do they contact you
Yeah.
through Instagram?
Rivero Health. Go to Rivero Health and just look up Brett Lloyd in the coaches list. I will come up. I am the only Brett there, I think,
Yeah.
and be happy to help you succeed at this wonderful way of eating.
Lovely. Great. Brett Lloyd, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.